Chosen one, God looked at what you survived, and he said he was impressed. Not at what you accomplished, not at what you built or earned or achieved. He was impressed by what you held together when everything around you was designed to pull it apart, by who you remained when the pressure was asking you to become something smaller, something angrier, something harder and more closed. 7 separate tests, 7 different parts of you under examination. Your patience in one season, your faith in another, your identity when no one was watching, and your courage when everyone was. Your capacity for love, when love had cost you more than it should have. Your willingness to trust a promise that had not yet arrived. And in each one, in every single room of your inner life that was put through that kind of fire, God saw you make a choice. Not a perfect choice, a real one. The kind that requires something from you that performance never could. When all 7 were complete, he did not whisper. He declared. He said, I am impressed. This one is ready. What you are about to hear is the full account of what each of those 7 tests was building in the deepest parts of who you are, and why God said what he said. Everything I am about to share with you in the next several minutes is given freely. If at any point your spirit tells you there is something more you need, something that can support the next season you are walking into, you will find it in the description and the pinned comment below. Only if you feel led. Before we go any further, I want to tell you what is waiting for you by the end of this message. You are going to understand exactly what each of the 7 tests was building in you and why no part of it was wasted. You are going to hear a declaration that God has spoken over your life, a declaration I believe your spirit has been waiting to receive. And I am going to share something practical that directly supports the chapter you are about to step into. Stay with me. Everything is coming. Now let me ask you something before we begin. Do you know what it feels like to be tired in a way that sleep does not fix? Not the tiredness that comes from working too hard or staying up too late. I am talking about the kind of exhaustion that lives in the bones, the kind that is still there in the morning even after you have rested. That heaviness you cannot explain to the people around you because there are no visible reasons for it. If that is familiar to you, I need you to hear this. That was not weakness, that was weight. The kind of weight that only a person who has been carrying something sacred for a long time would know. And the fact that you have been carrying it and still showing up, still breathing, still here, that means something. Some of you have been waking up at the same hour in the middle of the night, not because of noise, not because of your phone. Something wakes you and you lie in the dark and do not fully know why. Your body is processing things in those night hours that your conscious mind has not caught up with yet. And some of you have felt these waves of emotion that arrive without warning. You are fine, and then something moves through you, and there is no obvious reason for it. That is not instability. That is your interior landscape shifting, something being rearranged inside you that your feelings are registering before your mind can name it. And there is this restlessness. The things that used to satisfy you are not satisfying anymore. The routines that felt comfortable feel hollow now. Something inside you is reaching towards something that does not have a name yet. This is not breakdown. This is not burnout in the ordinary sense. This is what happens to a person who has been formed by 7 specific seasons of pressure and is now emerging into something new. Your body knows before your mind does, and what you are about to hear will give language to what your body has already registered. Before I walk you through each of the 7 tests, I need to tell you something about the word that God uses in the ancient text when he speaks about testing. In Hebrew, the word is nazar. It appears in one of the most significant moments in all of Scripture when God brought Abraham to the edge of the hardest thing imaginable and asked him to trust. The text says, God nasa Abraham. Translated into English, it means to test, to examine, to prove under pressure. But here is what most people do not know about this word. The same root, the same ancient sound, is connected to the word that means to lift up, to elevate, to carry to a higher place. So when God nazar you, when he brings you into a season of testing, the word itself carries two meanings at the same time: to test and to lift, to examine and to elevate. The proving and the rising happen together, not separately. This means that every season that felt like God was examining you to see if you would fail was actually a season where he was simultaneously lifting you towards something higher. The test and the elevation were not two different events. They were one. Hold that before we go further. There is a story in the ancient text about a man named Joseph. You may know pieces of it. Joseph did not face one trial. He faced layered trials, and each one went after something different. His sense of belonging was tested when his brothers sold him. His position was tested in Potiphar's house. His reputation was tested by a false accusation. His hope was tested in a prison cell where no one remembered him for years. Each trial was a different room. Each one targeted a different part of who he was. And when the elevation finally came, Joseph was ready for every dimension of it, because every dimension of him had been tested separately. We will come back to Joseph. But first, I need to show you the 7 rooms in your own house, because they look like his rooms. They just have your name on them. The first test went after your certainty. Not your faith, not yet. Your certainty. Because there is a difference between the two. Certainty says, I know exactly how this is going to work out, and I will trust God while that plan holds. Faith says, I do not know how this works out, and I will trust God anyway. The first test was designed to remove certainty so that real faith could emerge. It went after your proof. It went after the visible signs that told you God was still present. It went after the timeline you had drawn in your mind, where things would resolve by a certain point. And when that timeline passed without resolution, you were left in a place where you had to trust without evidence. That is not a comfortable place. It was not supposed to be comfortable. When your certainty was removed, what remained was real. The thing that stayed when the proof was gone, that is the beginning of unshakable faith. Not inherited, not borrowed from someone else's testimony. Yours, built in your own experience of choosing to believe when believing cost you something. God was not absent in that season. He was watching every moment you chose to keep trusting when stopping would have been easier. That is the faith he was building in you, and you passed the first test. The second test went somewhere different. It went after your timeline. Every day nothing changed. Every week the same prayer was still sitting in the air between you and heaven. Every month the answer did not arrive, and the silence from God began to feel like distance, even though it was not. Patience is not the ability to wait. Anyone can wait if they know when the waiting will end. True patience is the ability to hold your identity intact while the answer is delayed. To remain who you are, to remain open and soft and trusting, even when the waiting has lasted so long that people around you have stopped asking how things are going because they assume nothing has changed. God was not slow. He was selective. He was building something in you that instant answers could never produce. Instant answers grow instant faith. Delayed answers grow deep faith, the kind with roots, the kind that does not bend when the storm comes, because it has already survived its own private storm in the silence. You kept going back to pray when you did not feel like it. You kept trusting when trusting did not feel logical. That was not stubbornness. That was formation. The third test was the most personal. You were tested when the recognition was gone, when the role that made you feel like yourself was stripped away, and you were left with just the question of who you actually were underneath everything you had built around yourself. There was a season where the thing that made you feel valuable disappeared. A job, a relationship, a community, a title, something that gave you a sense of belonging and purpose. And when it was removed, you were left facing the most dangerous question a person can face. Who am I when nothing confirms it? The loss of the role was not failure, it was surgery. What the external identity was covering, the fear that without it you might not be enough, That fear needed to be surfaced and faced. Because a person whose identity depends on external confirmation cannot carry what is coming. What remains when everything external is removed is your true identity, not the constructed one, the one that was placed in you before you had a title, before you had a role, before you had an audience. You sat with that question. You did not run toward the next thing that would fill the void. And what you found in that stillness was something real, something that did not need the room to clap. That is identity worth building a life on. The fourth test went after a version of courage you did not know you had. Most people think courage is loud. They picture the person who speaks first in the room, who takes the bold public action, who announces their decision without flinching, and sometimes courage looks like that. But the courage God was building in you was a different kind. Not the courage to speak, not the courage to act, not the courage to be seen, the courage to remain. There were moments in that season where every reasonable voice inside you said it was time to leave. Leave the process, leave the faith, leave the uncomfortable place where you were being asked to stand still with no visible reward for standing still. And you stayed. From the inside, staying still can feel like defeat. It can feel like you are the person who has not figured out how to move forward. But from God's perspective, that stillness was one of the highest expressions of obedience He has ever witnessed from you. The moments you did not run were moments of extraordinary courage, even when they looked like nothing from the outside. 4 tests, 4 rooms, and there are 3 more. I want to pause here for just a moment before we continue, because I want to tell you about someone, a woman I am aware of, who described a period of 5 years in her life as seasons that had no name. She could not explain them to her family. She could not explain them in prayer without feeling like she was complaining. She carried them quietly, and the weight of carrying them quietly was its own kind of test. After those 5 years, she said something that has stayed with me. She said the hardest part was not the tests themselves. It was not knowing they were tests. She said if someone had told her at the beginning that each hard season was going after something specific, that it had a name and a purpose, she would have carried it differently. Not easier, but differently. With more dignity, with more trust. I am telling you that today. What you walked through had a name. Every room had a reason, and the person who came out of each of those rooms is not the same as the person who walked in. Now, Joseph, one more time. When he was finally elevated and Pharaoh placed the ring on his finger and the robe on his shoulders, Joseph did not stumble. He did not look like a man who had just come out of prison. He looked like a man who had been prepared for exactly this moment, because he had been. His time in Potiphar's house built administration. His time in prison built leadership without position. His years forgotten by the cupbearer built patience beyond what most could endure. Every room built something that the calling required. Your elevation is going to be the same. Take a real breath right now, just one. Not to receive anything or release anything, just to breathe. You have been carrying a lot in just the last several minutes of listening. Let the breath move through you. There are 3 tests left. And the 7th one is the one that changes how you understand all the others. Stay with me through part 2, because what comes next is the part that God sent this message to tell you. The 5th test went somewhere tender. It went after the conditions you had attached to love without knowing you had attached them, because most people love with invisible rules. I will give this much and expect this much in return. I will stay open as long as the opening feels safe. I will invest in this relationship as long as the investment comes back. Those are not wrong instincts. They are protective instincts. But they are not the love that the calling ahead requires. The 5th test was designed to stretch your capacity for love beyond what was comfortable and safe and reciprocal. You loved in a season where love was not returned the way you needed it to be. You gave in places where the giving cost more than you were prepared to spend. You stayed open in circumstances where closing would have been the smarter and the safer choice. And it hurt. I want to be honest about that. It hurt in ways you are still making sense of. But what was being built inside you in that hurt was something that cannot be manufactured through easy experiences. You were building a love that does not require a transaction. A love that gives because giving is who you are, not because giving guarantees a return. You were not rejected in that season. You were being taught the difference between love as an exchange and love as a covenant. And Joseph, one final time, when he revealed himself to his brothers, the same brothers who had sold him, who had chosen money over blood, he had every reason to choose power over mercy. He had every position of authority to make them feel what they had made him feel. But Joseph wept, and then he forgave, not because they deserved it, but because he had been formed into someone whose love was no longer conditional on being treated well. That is the love God was building in you across the 5th test. The 6th test went somewhere quieter. It went after your need to manage, your need to control the outcome, your need to understand the full plan before you would commit to the next step. There was a season where you made good plans, wise and careful plans, and they came apart. Not because you were wrong, not because you had missed something or failed to be diligent enough. They came apart because God was redirecting, and the redirection did not come with an explanation. It came with a closed door, or a silence, or a circumstance that made the original plan simply impossible. And you had to choose what to do with that. Surrender is not a weak word. In the language of the chosen one, surrender is one of the most advanced actions a person can take. It is not giving up. It is not abandoning the calling. It is releasing the specific form of the outcome while holding on to the promise underneath it. God was not trying to break your leadership. He was trying to break your grip, because a person who holds their plans tighter than they hold their trust in God cannot receive what God has actually prepared. They are too busy managing to be led. Now, I want to speak directly to the voice that may be speaking inside some of you right now. What if these seasons were not designed at all? What if they were just hard things that happened, and I am looking for meaning in randomness? That voice is loudest at the threshold. It was designed that way. And I want you to notice something. A person who is truly off track does not sit with this kind of attention for this long. You are here because something in you already knows. You are still listening because the spirit inside you recognizes the truth, even when the mind presents the doubt. The fact that you are still here is the answer to the question the doubt is asking. The 7th test was different from all the others. Not harder, not easier, different. Because the 7th test was not about something being taken from you. It was about something being given to you that you could not hold visibly. God placed a promise in your spirit, not in writing, not delivered through another human being, placed directly into your spirit. A knowing, a sense of something coming that you could not prove to anyone, could not show to anyone, and in your weakest moments could not fully prove to yourself. And then God asked you to hold it. Across time, you held the promise when the promise made no sense. You held the promise when the evidence said it was over. You held the promise when the people around you stopped believing it, when some of them gently told you it was time to be realistic, to accept things as they were, to put down something that was not arriving. You held it anyway. Holding an invisible promise across time is the most advanced spiritual skill that exists. Most people either need the promise fulfilled quickly or they let it go. What God was building in you, by asking you to carry something that only you and He could see, was a faithfulness that does not depend on visible confirmation, a faithfulness that can function in the dark. And I hear the Father say this to you now. You held what I gave you without being able to show it to anyone. You carried my word in silence when the silence was its own kind of suffering. That is faithfulness. That is exactly what I was watching for. 7 tests, 7 rooms. And now I need to show you what God saw when He looked at all 7 together. Because the revelation is not about the 7 tests individually. It is about what the 7 tests built together. You went in doubting your calling, and you are coming out certain of it. You went in fearing the silence, and you are coming out fluent in it. You went in carrying questions about your worth, and you are coming out knowing that worth was never the question. You went in holding an invisible promise, and you are coming out as the living proof that it was real. Here is what God was building across all 7. Not a person with one strength refined by one season. The calling ahead does not require one strength. It requires a person with faith that functions without proof, patience that holds identity intact across delay, identity that does not depend on external confirmation, courage that remains when everything recommends leaving, love that gives without requiring a transaction, trust that surrenders the form while holding the promise underneath it, and faithfulness to an invisible word across years of silence. That is not a person who emerged from suffering. That is a leader. That is a builder. That is a chosen one who is ready for what comes next. God did not design 7 tests because he doubted you. He designed 7 tests because what he has prepared for you requires every dimension that those 7 seasons built. And he has been watching every room. And when all 7 were complete, he looked at what had been formed, and he made a declaration. I hear the Father say this to you now. I did not put you through 7 tests because I doubted you. I put you through 7 tests because what I have prepared for you requires everything that those 7 seasons built. You are not the person who began those tests. You are the person who completed them, and I am ready. Are you? Before we close, I want to make sure you leave here with something you can hold clearly. Here is why you went through what you went through. The calling ahead of you requires a specific kind of person. Not a perfect person. Not a person who never struggled. A person who has been formed in 7 specific ways. Someone who has faith that does not require proof. Someone who can wait across long seasons without losing themselves. Someone who knows who they are when nothing confirms it. Someone who can stand still when everything recommends running. Someone who can love without conditions. Someone who can trust God when the plan dissolves. And someone who can hold an invisible promise across years of silence. That is what the 7 tests built. Every season had a purpose. No part of it was wasted. The person sitting here right now is not the same person who entered the first test. And God has declared over you, you are ready. Whatever is next, you are ready for it. Now there is something I want to share with you before we close, because it connects directly to where you are going from here. A neuroscientist named Dr. Lake spent 34 years of his life studying one question. He wanted to understand why some people operate with a clarity and a creativity and an intuition that most people spend their entire lives trying to find. And what he discovered after 3.5 decades of research was not what he expected to find. He found that every person, every single human being, comes into this world equipped with a specific brainwave frequency that operates like a genius state. Researchers at MIT and Princeton, along with several other leading institutions, have documented this frequency extensively over decades. It is associated with heightened intuition, with clarity of thought, with what ancient wisdom traditions call discernment, and what modern science calls the flow state. Children operate in this frequency naturally and effortlessly. It is not something they develop. They are born into it. Here is what changes that. Around the age of 7, something happens. The structure of formal education, the low-level stress of modern life, the constant pressure to conform and perform. These forces do not eliminate the frequency, but they begin to suppress it. Scientists who study this pattern call it the decline effect. The genius state is not destroyed, it is sleeping, and most adults spend their entire lives operating without access to the frequency they were born with. Now here is why this matters for you, specifically, right now. You have just been through 7 seasons of formation. Every room of your character has been tested and built. Your faith, your patience, your identity, your courage, your love, your trust, your faithfulness. These are now the foundation of who you are. But God does not form the spirit and leave the mind behind. The mind that will carry the calling forward needs to be operating at a frequency that matches what has been built on the inside. The tool that Dr. Lake developed after 34 years of research is a 7-minute audio track called The Genius Song. It uses a technology called brain entrainment to guide the mind back toward the gamma frequency, the state that was present in you as a child before the decline effect took hold. You listen through headphones, sitting or lying quietly, and for 7 minutes the audio does the work of beginning to reopen what years of noise and pressure had closed. Over 18,000 people have incorporated this into their daily practice. Less than 4% have ever asked for a refund. That number is not an accident. It is a signal that what is happening inside the people who use this consistently is real enough that they do not want to stop. The standard price for the Genius Song is $49. For those who are watching this video, Dr. Lake has made it available at $39, delivered instantly to your email as a digital file. No shipping, no waiting, and it comes with 4 additional resources valued at $80, included at no extra cost. I am not asking you to decide anything in this moment. I am telling you that for the person who has just walked through 7 seasons of formation and is stepping into something new, a tool that recalibrates the mind to match what the spirit has already been prepared for is not a random addition. It is a next step that makes sense. If your spirit tells you this is for you, it is in the pinned comment and in the description below this video. One thing I want to protect you from before you go anywhere else. There are other sources online claiming to offer this product. They are not the real source. Go only through the link in the pinned comment and description. That is the only way to guarantee you are getting what Dr. Lake actually created. Only if you feel led, and only through that link. Now, I want to speak over who you are. You are a cycle breaker. You broke patterns in your bloodline that have stood for generations. Patterns of fear, of silence, of settling for less than what was promised. You did not just survive them, you ended them. That is not a small assignment. That is one of the highest things a chosen one can carry. You are a pioneer. You walked paths that had no maps. You trusted direction from a source that the people around you could not always see. You went first. You paid the cost of going first. And you are still here. You are a spiritual warrior. You fought battles that no one could see. You won wars that happened in the quiet, in the dark, in the middle of nights when no one else knew what you were contending with. And you are still standing. Now, I want you to do something simple. You do not need to stand up or move anywhere. Just feel the weight of what you have just heard and let it settle into the lower part of your chest. Let it move down past the throat, past the shoulders, and into the place where you hold the things that matter most to you. Let the 7 rooms become a foundation you can feel beneath you, not a burden on top of you. From this moment forward, they are not weight. They are ground. Breathe once, slowly, and receive this. You sat with 7 hard seasons today. You did not just listen to a message. You sat with the full account of what God was doing in the years that cost you the most. And that is not a casual thing. It took something from you to stay present for all of it, and I honor that. You can set down the question of why now. You know why. Every test had a name. Every season had a purpose. Every room was building something that the next chapter of your life will require. You are not the person who entered the first test. And you are not someone who simply survived. You are the chosen one who completed all 7. And God has declared over you, I am impressed. You are ready. You are formed. You are faithful. You are ready. Go. What is next for you has been prepared. The tests are complete. Walk into the season ahead as the person you have become, not the person who endured, but the person who was built. If one of these 7 tests reached you today, I want to know which one. Type the number in the comments, or if all 7 found you, just type, I passed. Let me know you were here. If this message was meant for you, the like is how you tell God you received it. And if you want to continue this journey, the next message is already here waiting. Subscribe so it finds you when it arrives. And if there is someone in your life who does not yet know that their hard season has a name and a purpose, send them this today. You might be the reason they finally find out.